All right, guys, we're giving just a few more minutes. Let some more people join. We'll be back. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May Big Bend Fishing Report. We are live from Camp Keaton. Camp Keaton is located, about 4 miles? 4 miles from the Keaton Beach Boat Ramp. You can check them out on Facebook, website. So we'll go ahead and get started. We've got Captain Greg DeVault, Pat McGriff, and me, Kenny Mullins. So, you guys been fishing?
Yeah, we have. Yes, I think all of us have been. But
oh
yeah, I fished actually today. We fished today and quite a bit last week. It's been, as you guys know, it's been good. It's redfish bite has been spectacular. I know you guys past been tearing the trout up. We've been struggling on the trout, but I haven't really come off the bank more than 20 or 30 yards in the last week and a half, 2 weeks either.
And I hadn't gotten within 300 yards of it. So you can do what you want to do this time of year. And even though the water's hotter than it should be, the fish are still acting like it's April.
Right.
They're still giving us April behavior.
Yeah.
And they're pre-spawn. Their eggs are getting full, but they're not ready to lay them. They're definitely in pre-spawn behavior as far as being aggressive and hungry and feeding. We've had some extended feeding periods for the trout anyway.
Yeah, we've had a couple of weeks of really good tides too.
Oh yeah.
The wind has helped us with that. I've always, ever since I've been a captain, I think you get a south wind in the springtime. It's time to go. On 10 or 25, fish are going to eat on this.
Especially on this coast where we here in the Big Bend, it always south something is always holding the bait, bringing the bait to you, or holding the bait against the bank, and that is always better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Been catching a lot of reds, but yeah, I've been trout fishing a little bit. And
I think you've been cobia fishing a little bit too.
oh, I don't know anything about that. Yeah, it's cobia bite was pretty hot there for a while.
Yeah, yeah. I know I'm a little bit north of you or west of you, whichever way you want to say it, above you, up there in Econfine area, and I've caught one, and what I haven't really been looking for them, but like if I go by and see some manatees, I'll look in there and see if they're following them around and the stingrays and that kind of stuff. But I haven't seen a lot of them yet. But I'm sure, like I said, I know you're not quite that far, and they're working. They're coming from the south up. So
Yeah, we did catch one off the back of a black tip. We hooked it, seen a big black tip, and hooked up on the black tip and caught the cobia.
yeah, it's there. Where I grew up and fished for many years down there off of Pasco and Hernando. March and April were always cobia time, and we used to just sight fish and just ride around, and I got a tower boat, and you just see the stingrays and see them follow them. It was very visual,
Right.
and you could, cobia is a cobia, so he's going to hit almost anything you throw at him. And we throw, lures, you throw bait, you throw, we used a lot of the, I used to use those culprit worms and put it on a big rigging
Jig.
hook.
Yep.
And just pitch it out in front of them, and they love eels.
Oh yeah.
And it, it's very visual. So your client would always see that fish turn and hit, and from there on, it's just fun.
Yeah. One thing about them, when they're willing to eat, they'll eat anything.
Yeah.
When they don't want to eat, it doesn't
Yep.
matter what. You do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's artificial, live.
No, we used to always, when we're riding at them, we'd throw 2 or 3 times at them. We had 2 or 3 good casts on them, and they didn't bite. He just turned and found another fish because he just wasn't gonna bite.
Right.
Yeah, it just didn't matter unless you had a spear gun. You weren't gonna get him.
Yeah. And Chris Williamson says, "How about triple tail?" Actually, was it 2 weeks ago? We were running out to catch some mackerel, Spanish mackerel, hitting the big schools of bait, and then we were running to get some sea bass, and there was a giant just free floating.
Oh, nice.
Oh man, it all worked out perfect.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of them right here in this area. Not big ones. We get a lot of small ones. You may run 20 buoys and see one barely legal.
Yeah, I'd say last year I remember, kind of because I always kind of slalom the crab traps if I'm going to or from a spot, and it was probably right about, well, it had to be a little bit before this because normally I'm down in Boca Grande this time of year, but so it was probably April, and we had a good bunch of them, on up there for probably a week and a half. But again, they were all, 14, 15-inch fish, fun to catch.
Right.
Blast to catch, but they just, there weren't any. I never saw a big one on the blue crab traps.
Yeah, I travel. I do run triple tail trips. I travel for those, and actually, if you guys are watching and you do want a triple tail fish, and hit up Captain Chris Williamson. He's commenting on here. He's a heck of a triple tail guide. But yeah, I travel different areas and get on them. And typically, it'll be later this month when they start showing up where I go, all the way through summer.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much been trout, reds, and
we got a pretty good flounder bite too. I mean,
the flounder,
crazy good, but it's been consistent.
We caught a limit one day.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't think I've ever done that rod and reel.
Pat's telling us to shut up about the flounder. You know that.
They'll never find where I caught them at.
I think the reason though, because I've been throwing, we were talking earlier, I've been throwing a lot of topwaters because the topwater bite's been good, and then spoons and miradines, and notoriously you don't catch a lot of flounder on those baits. And the times we did throw jigs is when we caught them. So I'm guessing put 2 and 2 together, throw jigs a little more, you might catch a few more flounder.
Now, last weekend in Louisiana, there was some flounder.
Yeah.
There was everything.
Yeah.
But,
Well, they're aggressive when they do when you're getting a good bunch of them and start feeding. I mean, I've actually seen them, you know, ancient history. We were out in Texas pre-fishing for a tournament, and they were literally in a bay. We were watching them bust through the surface, hitting, you know, killifish and little finger mullet, stuff like that.
Yeah, they're a lot more aggressive than people realize, because when we catch them, we're generally in shallow water. I used to dive, and we had a camera, and I took the camera out to the crane. Everybody knows what the crane is here. I think it's 46 foot deep, and I set the camera up, and then when I went back up, we were up there. We were there to flounder fish and grouper fish, but we looked on the camera, and here comes 5 flounder, like my fingers, swimming about 6 feet off the bottom, together like the Blue Angels fly in formation. And they just came by the camera and went on back around and went around the other side of the, and I had never seen that before. I'd never seen them free swimming, and they were just like any other fish in a school. They just went back and went around the other side of the crane, the barge. The crane.
Usually if you see a flounder, it's just a bunch of little sand puffs.
Yeah.
Well, these were siblings or something. I don't know, but I've never seen that on film or anywhere else, but these guys did it. Now, I'll take that back. We were sheep's head fishing when I first was catching flounder off this coast in the 90s. And a woman caught a sheep's head, brought it up, and I thought I saw 2 flounder behind him, but didn't say anything. And I said, Larry, let's put another shrimp right there. And we dropped it down, and she caught a flounder. And there were 3 more that came up following her, as it turns out. The males will do that. So I figured what was going on at the barge was the lead fish was a female, and they were following her, hoping to spawn.
Spawning.
But I saw it twice, where they came up, and then they saw the boat, and they turned around and went back down.
Have you ever caught them on top water?
So
Caught them on a floating lure.
on
The lip
at that one spot.
Yeah.
That we did that. That was it was. I mean, it was just stupid.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Because there was, I mean, there wasn't just flounder. There was all kinds of stuff in there feeding. It was a drain, and it was just draining little, like I said, those little killifish. And
speaking of flounder, I'll give people here a tip that I know Pat knows it. You probably know it, and I tell all my clients, when I realize they have a flounder on, I tell them to get it to the boat. Just keep doing figure 8s with it till I can get it in the net.
Yep.
Keep his head moving.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because he wants to stay down. You got to corkscrew him around until he comes up, reluctantly and gradually. And if you try to dip at him, he'll open his mouth and blow the bait out usually. But he'll hold on to a bait that he does not have a hook if you keep his head moving.
Yep.
And more times than not,
they're not.
People doesn't even realize what they have on, and they never set it hard enough to get through that hard mouth.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
a lot of people just think they got an oyster at the bottom because it just swims with you as you're reeling it.
Yeah. Whenever they say, I got something that feels funny, I'll break my neck to get that.
Yeah.
Because I know what it is.
Yeah. You got a flounder.
Paul, I think I hung a log. That's the biggest bass of your life is when she says that. Yeah, if they hung a log with you, it's a flounder. I'll tell you another tip most people don't know. When he comes to the boat and the person, the client wants to raise up and let him open his mouth, let him go by you if you're by yourself. And we scout by ourselves. And when he goes by, you snatch from head to tail, and he will open his mouth, and you will pull the jig into the roof of his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But you snatch as hard as you can back across his body, not when he's coming to you, but when he's gone by you.
Right.
And you can catch quite a few more of them by yourself.
Yeah, we did catch. I mean, we saw a bunch when we were in Louisiana last weekend, but talk about just an amazing fishery. We'll be going along, and you'll see redfish, and then just giant sheephead, and then blue catfish, then
bass.
Largemouth bass. It's but I
Okay.
will say they do not have the trout we have here. They have the numbers. They don't have the size.
They don't have the size. There's certain times they will catch consistently good ones, but no, they don't.
When a redfish 26 inches long, it weighs 8 pounds. It's no wonder the trout are hungry.
Yes.
There's so many reds, and there's so many more reds than trout that they rule the roost, and the trout don't get a chance at that much
Oh,
food.
there's a lot of trout.
Yeah, and I think the problem with their trout out there too is they have there when the trout come in. So I've seen in the river there's several spillways down towards the end of Southwest Pass, and I've literally come through those spillways, and coming off the river, those spillways will be 130, 140 foot deep, and then they'll come up and there'll be a flat that's like 12, 14 foot deep, and I've seen there was probably 10 guide boats all lined up, and as we come through the spillway, each of them had 4 anglers on there. Every rod was bowed up, and I mean as fast as they could cast.
Oh, yeah.
I remember my dad was with me, and I remember we were just pre-fishing for a tournament. And I remember watching this, and I'm like, I gotta see what this is. So we pull over and got on the end, and it's trout every cast. So we start casting out there, and it's literally, and they were nice trout. They were 17 to 19-inch trout, but it was every cast, and we didn't need trout for anything, so we went and looked around and everything. Came back about 2 hours later, and they're all, there was new boats there, but there were still 10 boats there. They got their limits and left. But yeah, I think that's the reason they don't get a lot of giant trout is when the trout do come in, pressure, and there's so many of the trout. They're just, I mean, some of the locals out there that I got to know said there's times where those spillways and they get the saltwater does what's called a wedge because the saltwater's heavier. Am I right there? Saltwater's lighter. No, saltwater's heavier. Yeah. So when the saltwater pushes in the river, when you get a low river, it comes in on the bottom, and the top of the river is fresh. So those trout and redfish come in on the bottom. Well, apparently you can mark them, and they say they'll get out there in some of those areas when this happens. It happens certain times of the year, and they'll literally be just thousands and thousands and thousands of trout come into that river on that wedge.
Wouldn't that be terrible?
Yeah.
I will say though, that was my first time fishing there, and it is an amazing fishery, but
it's good to come home.
It's good to come home, but it's also seeing, what everyone thinks of Louisiana. I mean, it's great, but living here and then going there, it's not as much of a difference. I mean, we have a good red fishery.
We do. We do.
We have a great trout fishery too.
The difference out there, I think, is the sight fishing capability out there is a lot better than it is here. You can do it here.
Oh yeah.
But out there, it's, I mean, we're like a Chevy, they're like a Ferrari.
Right.
It's very good, especially if you found a really clean area, and you just get up in that boat and you just sit there and wait for them to swim by you, and just pick your fish. Yeah. Our fish, if you can see them, you can catch these fish too without any problem.
Oh yeah.
Out there, it's the same way. It's just you get a lot more opportunity, and it's fun. I mean, I've been going out there since 97 was my first year I ever went out there, and I mean it never ceases to amaze me. Still, I go out there every year for a month or so, and it never ceases to amaze me the fishing, but. About a month, even as good as it is, about a month of Louisiana is all I can take.
Yeah. Like I said, it was a great experience. I'm going back in 3 weeks, but like I said, living here and fishing here, going there, it wasn't exactly what I thought it would be compared to like Pasco and Pinellas. If you went from Pasco, Pinellas, Hillsborough there, that's a big difference.
God, yeah, you're in paradise.
Yeah.
And I think that's because there's a couple different factors there. We have no pressure here. Not a lot of pressure. We have pressure compared to Pasco and Fernando and all those areas down south. And then Louisiana is similar in pressure.
Right.
They have a lot of pressure out there, but they got a lot of area.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places to disappear out there. So even though they have a lot of boats, everybody spreads out. The only problem they got is their limits are crazy. And
and that's kind of where I was going with it. They lowered their limits this year, and now it's down to 4 redfish per person, 15 trout per person. They're realizing that they've got to be able to sustain the resource.
Some of them are.
Right. I'm saying that the
Yeah.
state,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
state.
Yes.
So we get frustrated here at times because of what our limits are, but we're going to have a long,
Yeah.
sustainable resource.
Yeah.
And hearing the stories, and of course, growing up, you and I grew up in the same area. I mean, you know what the fishing like was back in the
Oh yeah.
late '80s, all
Yeah,
the way to the really late '90s.
Yeah.
And then it just tanked
Yeah,
fast.
until when all the population really started, and we started having water quality issues was the main problem.
Yeah.
We lost the habitat and that kind of stuff really hurt that. But the the amount, the limits that they take. I mean, everybody's gonna have a different opinion on Pat. I know Pat's biting his tongue right now.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I'll just interject. In 1992, accidentally, I found flounder on marker 20, which was long gone now, and took a charter of 2 guys out. I caught 1 flounder, and we brought in 73, and we didn't fish 4 hours.
Right.
So,
And you don't see that anymore.
well, it sets itself up if you know where to look. I've caught more than that, and Billy and I, just 2 of us on Steenhatchee Reef, caught 71 in 93.
Yeah.
In December, no, it would have been 94 because it was right after the storm of the century. But you have to know how to catch them when you find them. And now you can't have the 5, so you're not going to have over 15 or 20 in the boat regardless.
Yeah.
But eventually they'll cut that down to 1 per boat or 1 per vessel.
Now, I will say the problem with Florida, while we're on the topic, look at gag grouper. You see what the gag grouper limits are this year?
Mhm.
They're using way outdated.
And
Well,
they
they're using
increase,
sci- yeah,
they
they're using-
increase
they're using
the,
science. It's not.
they increase
relative.
the commercial catch and
Yeah.
quota, and reduced us. I don't say us because I'm not going. 9 days and 1 fish.
Is it 9 days? Yeah, I thought it was 7. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
if you're going, if they're that threatened, you should close. You ought to have an emergency closure
Right.
and come back in 3 years and find out. The problem is the only way they can take a measurement is through the commercial catch,
Mhm.
because they're not counting recreational catch.
Right.
It's not a legitimate data. Their data is illegitimate unless it's commercial. So they have to let them continue to catch them in order to have any data to rule on.
So, getting back to our fishing this time of year,
Mhm.
Let's tell people what they need to do in May.
that's what I'm getting at. What are y'all catching them on now?
Well, like I said, I've been predominantly red fishing. It's been when we don't have a ton of floating grass, I've been using topwaters predominantly, just because it's fun.
Oh yeah.
and they're eating them really well.
You
I
like
mean,
mirror lure, don't you?
Yeah, I like mirror. I also like skitter walks. I do. I like the small skitter walks, especially if there's. So I like the mirror lure if there's a little bit of ripple, because a little bit of heavier bait and it takes the waves better.
Mhm.
And I like the skitter walk if it's just dead flat, because it moves better in the water.
It's a lighter plug.
Yeah, it's a
too.
little bit lighter plug, so it doesn't, the waves will beat it up and it doesn't work right in waves. But regardless, right now the way they're hitting topwaters, I mean, you could tie treble hooks on a stick you find and probably get hit.
And your key and magic is finding the mullet, right?
It has been. Now I've caught them without the mullet too, but definitely mullet and some kind of structure.
Yep.
Whether it be rock, whether it be oyster bar, it can just be a sand hole. As long as there's mullet and one of those 3 types of structure,
Right.
there's going
Mullet,
to be red-
ballyhoo, glass minnow.
Yeah, any kind of bait. The mullet, I key in on the mullet a little more though. 'Cause,
I do the big mullet.
Yeah, big mullet. Yes, for sure. And it just that has been probably the last 3 weeks.
Now, when you find all of those together,
Yeah,
It's-
you put the poles down and don't move.
Yeah.
I mean that, and we did that the other day. We literally sat through topwaters in one spot for almost an hour and a half, and got bit consistently. And it was it was just fun. Guys were just on the front hooting and hollering because you know, you see that, you hear that redfish come up and explode on it, and everybody, you know, it just gets everybody's adrenaline going.
Right.
I've always said I'd rather catch one fish on a top water than 10 on a jig.
Yeah, it's this time of year. I wear my arm out.
Mhm.
Top water. It's
Yeah,
you know. In fact, it killed me not to throw it last week.
I bet. Yeah,
It just
tournament fishing, you don't use them.
No, and I tied one on.
Yeah,
And I threw it about 3 times. What am I doing?
yeah,
And but it's just that time of year, you know.
Yeah.
And I'll be asleep at night going. um, but what you've been throwing any soft plastics?
not a lot. That's what we were talking earlier before we got started. You know, it seems like everything I've been throwing has been topwater, spoons, and mirrodines.
Yep.
And you know, it's kind of funny because one day they'll eat the mirrodines, the next day they'll eat the spoon, and I think a lot of it has to do with what kind of cloud cover and wind we have and everything like that. I'm sure of it. But like I was telling Pat, I've been catching very, very few trout in along the edge, and you know, not even seeing them. And I drifted point to point. You know, I wasn't more than 35, 40 yards off the bank drifting to it, and we started catching trout on the mirrodines right away. So, you know, they're not far. It's just it's kind of strange to me that they're not, you know,
Where the bait
they're
is.
from here to, you know, your truck away from where everything is. And
Well, you know, earlier in the year, we talked about it being salinity, but now we haven't had a measure of rain in 6 weeks.
yeah,
So we can't blame it on that. And it must be, I say it's time because it's spawning time. These fish are trying to get near the areas that they intend to spawn in.
mhm,
And they look for a certain salinity coefficient, and that's out there off the hill. It's usually wrapping 4 feet for my business and my money over
Mhm.
the years. I'm going to wrap 4 feet in May, June, July, because that's when they're going to spawn, and they're not going to spawn in 2 feet of water. All the studies from Virginia and Texas, which are the only people that study trout.
Mhm.
This county, I mean, this state doesn't ever study trout, and they don't stock trout. They don't care about trout. It's all about redfish here. But irregardless, when they've done the studies, those fish are in that depth, 4 foot.
and you say that, and I've noticed when I'm fishing, I'll look out behind me. We don't see a lot of boats, but I do see boats, and they're all probably half mile out from me, which is going to put them right in that depth.
They're going to be in that depth.
Hmm.
And as I tell people, if you wrap 4 feet, if you don't know anything else, and you can throw a jig and caging, which we've caught a lot of fish. Kenny will tell you too that. But I put on the little P&V by Assassin in the Laguna shrimp, and I had been throwing 5-inch baits, and the floor was covered with 6 or 8 different ones, and I'd caught some nice trout, but not as many fish. And my clients are catching fish on bait, on pinfish, and I put on that little P&V, and I mean, I caught 6 keeper trout on 7 casts or 8 casts, I've forgotten. But the point was, those fish were not willing to take that 5-inch bait, but they would take that 2.5-inch bait.
Hmm.
That's matching the hatch, and that's typical spring trout fishing. You need to play with your colors and your profiles, and you may find that you've got a magic toy in your box you didn't know you had.
So I've been throwing the little PMV in Laguna unweighted under a cork. Yeah, I've been throwing on jig head too, but unweighted under a cork is a lot of
Like
people
flutter.
they like using that cork.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's a lot easier to stay in contact. They've got visual contact as well as, you know, they can watch what's going on and learn. You can teach a lot faster with the cork, and then you can take the cork away and teach. But if you start trying to teach touchy-feely, it's a lot harder. You build their confidence in the cork, and then sometimes you can convert them to a jig.
Yeah, especially if you get a really good bite going where
Right.
the fish are aggressive. 'Cause
Right.
they know they feel it, and
Right.
they understand what they're feeling for.
So I have been using that Laguna P&V, and I will say I like the P&V. I do have Little Johns in my box, but I like the P&V.
Yeah, it's a good bait.
And I'm not knocking another bait, but
No.
the thing I like about those is they still, even if you feed them on a jig head and you get them a little crooked, a little bent,
Mhm.
they still have a good
Yeah, they're soft enough that
right.
they straighten out a little bit.
Yeah, and it's so you don't get that
Yeah, you don't get that wobble.
wobble.
Well, I've been throwing the 1/16 spring lock, Assassin's Lure 1/16 spring lock, and catching nice trout on the Laguna shrimp, the stinky pink, the pink ghost, and caught a few on croaker shad.
Croaker shad's been a big one for me, but I will say I'm not really catching the trout until the pinfish eat it up small enough.
Make it small.
So it's about the size of the PNV.
Well, it's funny. There was a lot of the pinfish, even where I'm fishing, I'm seeing are about 2.5 inches.
Little guys.
Yeah, they're not the big palm-sized pinfish.
But that's this
Still-
year. That's this year's class.
Yeah, but I'm
That's
just
this
if
year's
that's
class.
about the same size, as the bait.
PMV.
Yeah,
Yeah, and people thinks that once that tail's gone, you got to throw it away, get a new one. No, keep fishing it. Yeah, I'll let you know when you need a new one.
If you take the sea shads and turn them upside down the way I do,
mm-hmm.
when you lose the tail, the point, the back is still straight, and the bait will fish fine. But if you turn it around and rig it so the tail is digging, and you lose the tail, then the bait will twirl,
Twirls.
and you can't catch anything.
Well, they used to make a little 2.5 or 3 inch jerk bait.
They do.
They still doesn't
Yep.
still make. Okay, I haven't used them in so long.
He makes a 3 inch and a 4.
Yeah, I used to use a lot in freshwater. That little
Yeah.
jerk bait.
Yeah.
But
Well, we used the split tail shads back years ago here, but I haven't thrown the split tails in years.
I have some in the box.
I got one color because I ain't gonna tell you what it is. It's a flounder bait. That's why I'm not gonna tell you.
you can take that one with you.
Yeah, that's the only split tail, and I used to have 30 split tail colors,
Yeah,
but now the Elite Shiner took over for what I used to do with the split tail under the cork. And the split tail was a better bait under the cork for me because if you had bait of that size getting struck, then you were bringing fish up to that bait.
And it probably darted around a little better than
Yeah,
That's
it
a little bigger
looked
tail.
more like a real minnow
Yeah.
than
acted like one. Yeah.
yeah. But,
yeah.
But the split tail, the trick to fishing that is cut or bite the bottom tail off, and the pinfish won't take the whole tail. They're not going to come up and get on top of the one that's pointed up, but they will get this one. If you bite this one off, then you can continue to fish it. It'll still wiggle, and the pinfish won't cut the bait in pieces.
That's that years of knowledge coming out right there.
Well, it's the size, it's like I say, why is a hot dog this big around?
I don't
You
know.
don't know?
I
You
don't
gotta
know.
answer
All
that
right,
one.
be quiet and listen.
Because
So
the
the
cigar
bun-
maker made it.
No, be quiet. So the bun will fit in your mouth.
Oh, gee.
If the bun will fit in your mouth, you can't eat the hot dog. That's why.
Yeah,
the
we're gonna
hot
leave
dog-
that one alone.
That's why I wasn't going to touch it.
Yeah, we won't even go
Hey.
any farther.
Hey, it's just a fact. It's a fact. When you caught somewhere around 500,000 pinfish, you understand that the size of the bait, it has to be able to get in his mouth, and that's why I use a number 14 hair hook to catch pinfish with, because it will go in the mouth of the creature that I'm after. People go out there with a number 10 cricket hook and wonder why they can't catch pinfish this little. It won't. The bun won't go in their mouth.
And now you know.
So how you know?
So how many pinfish did you catch tonight?
112 in just under an hour.
It's a lot of pinfish.
Well, there's nothing else to do.
How long did it take you to get that many baits over
But-
at Robbins today? Less than an hour.
About 3 hours.
Robbie talked to us, told us 2 hours worth of bass stories.
I
Yep.
have no doubt.
Then the red bellies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he told us that things I didn't know about bluegills and shellcracker. He said weren't fit to eat. That if it wasn't a red belly, it wasn't worth.
Red belly and stump knocker.
Boy, I have eaten a whole lot of sorry damn.
Telling you, I've been awfully hungry a lot of times, I guess.
He said if you didn't have anything else, then you could eat a shellcracker. And I said, man, please. He hadn't eaten them where I get them. You go out there to Miccosukee and catch bluegills or redfish and tell me they're not absolutely out of this world.
Yep.
They're crappie and bluegill and Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
I'm itching to do a little freshwater fishing.
Yeah.
You miss doing it?
No, I'm itching to go.
Oh, you're itching to go.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually itching to do some bass fishing.
Yeah. We took over the weekend that both girls and the grandkids down. We took the airboat out or the little boat and went up on the Wasiska up there and just idled down it and everything and caught a few little bass and everything. It was just fun. It's nice everything's just clean when you get done. You don't have to
Oh yeah.
You don't have to wash everything, and you just got to pull a little bit of grass off the motor every now and then. But,
Yep.
Yeah, that river, there was we saw a ton of mudfish, ton of big, nice sized bass. Not big ones, but nice ones.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the best lure I've used there in best color is like the motor oil Wizard.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what. I guess because the clean water.
probably. That's one good thing out here too. Like Pat was saying earlier, we haven't had all the rain, and the water out here is getting really, really clean and clear.
Oh yeah.
We're losing the redness, and you can see. I mean, you can see color all the way down to the bottom now.
We're gonna get some rain this weekend.
Yeah, we are, but it's that kind of rain doesn't hurt it. It's when we get a week of it
Right.
that really floods in there and everything turns red real quick. But I actually started to see. I wasn't sure I was seeing them, but it was yesterday. Some scallops.
Yep.
So that was good to see them already.
Yeah,
they were tiny, but they're probably about the size of a $50 maybe.
Last year, not this past duck season, the duck season before, Brent and I, we were guiding a trip, and we had to park the boat like almost a half a mile away because it's so shallow.
Mm-hmm.
And he went walking out there to get the boat as I was picking up decoys, and he recorded a video of him picking up a bunch of big scallops.
Really?
This was in January.
Wow.
And
that's unusual.
He recorded himself illegally harvesting.
no, he didn't keep them. He didn't keep them.
You just said
He showed
He
himself
didn't
putting
keep
them back.
That's harvesting.
He didn't keep them. He didn't even take them out of the water.
Sure. Okay.
They didn't become sushi or anything like
No.
that.
Yeah, a couple more months they will.
Yes.
I remember 91, on the first year I moved down here, my mother was so upset that I wasn't going to be home for Thanksgiving. She brought Thanksgiving to Florida, and my sister and my two nephews, and I was out, and all of a sudden they started dipping in the water, and it's Thanksgiving, and they were dipping scallops at Keaton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were probably pretty big by that time of year.
They were, and we took ours and ate them, but I mean, we didn't release them.
Well, then there probably wasn't a
I don't think
season on them then.
I don't know if there was a season in 91, 92.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but if it was, nobody cared if you got them out of season.
Yeah, because we had
You could have 5 gallons per person.
Yeah, we had one of the camps down there off Port Richey and off of Pasco, and we used to just jump right in, swim. I mean, we'd fill a 50-gallon garbage can full of them.
Oh yeah.
Back, it was back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just all you could get.
They're getting a good population again.
Starting to.
Run and float.
Yeah. They have a good population for about 2 weeks.
That's what I'm fixing to say. It won't last very long.
It doesn't. No, they get about 2 weeks worth of it, and then they're slim pickings.
Yeah.
But they are showing up, and it all has to do with good water. Just
Water quality.
yeah.
And speaking of that, we got to protect our seagrass here. It's
Yeah. Well, I think our biggest enemy up here is the fresh water. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that for the seagrass. I mean, that's why. So if not to compare it, but if you go farther south, you get like down around Pasco and everything. I mean, we got acres and acres of the big, thick turtle grass that you don't see up here.
right.
You do. That's here, but you don't see it like it is down there. And the only difference between here and there is, outside of the population and the growth, is the amount of fresh water that hits the water.
Right.
I think we get with all the creeks and everything, which makes for a much better ecosystem. But you get all that fresh water, it turns that water darker, and the sun doesn't penetrate, and the grass doesn't grow as well. So I think we just get a different kind of grass up here. But I think it, like I said, it enhances everything else. I mean, that fresh water flushes everything. Obviously we can get too much of it, but
Yeah, because down there, I mean, it's a pretty good stretch between the Cody River and the Anclote
yeah,
River.
yeah.
And
And
then,
everything you get down there anymore is runoff. You don't
Right.
get the actual, like here, it's fresh water.
right.
It's draining through the marsh. It's clean. It comes out there. It's just red.
Yep.
Up there you're getting runoff.
Yeah. So, what do you expect to see across the next few weeks?
Better fishing than it has been, as they're going to continue to congregate to spawn. And the bigger fish are vulnerable now, or which are being accessible, because they're not going to stay up there in the shallow water drag. They're going to bug out and move after they beef up, because the eggs. Well, I'll tell you what we did Saturday. It was tournament day. I had a friend of mine from Sylvester come down. We made one long drift, probably 3/4 of a mile, put 6 keepers in the boat, and I said, let's go 7, I think, 7 keepers. And the tide broke. It was a dipsy-do, terrible tide, little dipsy-do, 4.5-hour tide. And we were at the trough, so we were at the low, and I said, let's run out here and catch some black sea bass. And we did. We went out there, and those fish out there, I know which ones they were because they were larger, except for the 23-inch fish we caught on the shallow water grip. And their eggs are bigger. The ones that came out of 10 feet of water, the eggs were closer to spawning than the ones coming out of 3 and 4 feet of water. But they're all very large for this time of year. They're not the right color. They're still a moon away, or at least Saturday they were. So you're looking at 3 weeks. So the second moon in May is going to be some of the best fishing we have this year.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, as far as your opportunity to catch a limit of 10 trout and have some big trout in there to release as well. And it's already been outstanding.
Oh yeah, it's been good.
I had one day, I know you've had some days like this, but since we did this, I had one day where we had 9 trout over, and 7 of them were over 21 inches,
Yep.
including a 25. And the next day we had 3 over plus the one we kept, so there's another 4. So 10 and 4 is 14. We had 3, 17. For me to go through 20 trout over 20 inches in 5 days, you have to go back a long number of years to see that many fish. So we've had a great little bonus to after the storm, after Helene, of keeping pressure off of these fish, and those have been able to grow.
Yeah.
And those fish got larger because no one was out there pulling them out of the water due to the cleanup at Keaton, the cleanup on these rivers, which restricted the access. And it's been remarkable.
Yeah,
It has.
and that those same days, I was out there on the water with you, and we were having the same thing. In fact, we were having to move to find smaller fish.
Yeah.
I mean-
Be able to keep them.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But I ran out there to catch some black sea bass whenever it was just slick.
Mhm.
I'm like, all right, the trout's not going to eat. We're going to go do something else. And like Pat said, I get out there and I'm in 10, 12 feet of water and I'm catching trout.
Yeah. Yeah.
And good trout.
Oh yeah.
So the one thing I've done, what I think is going to keep going on through this month, is my best bite has been on, starting at the low incoming and then riding all the way through the first part of the outgoing has been the best bite for me on the redfish. So, early, if I get out early and, I don't have enough water yet or have the water I want, I've been drifting out, just trying to catch a few trout. And it seems like, for me, the mid part of the incoming tide, because I had one trip where they wanted to get a limit of trout, and the one time we stayed out on them, we were between an area that I just call it Rockies because there's 5 or 6 big rock piles all through there, and if we stayed right in that little area, which might have been 3/4 of an acre, we were catching trout on every cast.
Yep.
If we got outside of that, we wouldn't catch a fish. And it was, I understand they're around that structure and,
But why that many?
yeah, there was a lot of them.
Well,
That's a
that
similar-
indicates when I see a concentration in nature here, fish, my attitude is there's a vacuum somewhere else. because when you suddenly have 2, 3, 4 times the density of fish in an area, it means that they were somewhere where there was no food and now they found food. And that means you're not going to catch them in the other. And that sounds simple, but you're not going to catch 1 or 2 because if there's nothing to eat, then they're not going to be there.
Would they have been there to get ready to spawn? So I know,
See, and
my history is, they spawn on hard areas.
and that's what I was saying. I've been catching them, a congregation of them on rocks,
Okay.
deeper rocks.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that is we don't have the grass that we normally do.
Right.
We have a lot of rock grass north of Warrior that's never been in or hasn't been in that area in 20 years. And it's all the way to the surface in 4 feet of water. Now, rock grass gets a foothold and gets a start ahead of the other grasses, the eelgrass and the turtle grass, due to restricted light, which is what we had on late winter and early spring.
Especially not this past one, the year before was
2
even
years,
worse.
Oh, yeah.
2 years. And so those fish can't ambush from the grass. They've got to have an object. They're not attracted to the object. They have to have the object to attack, to hide,
Right.
to hide and attack from. So if you're an ambush predator, you hide, you're sitting still and pouncing, just like a tiger or a leopard. And that trout has got to have that structure. So if there's no grass, he's going to stop in the rocks.
Yeah.
Whether there's any food or not. Whatever food becomes available, he can get it. But if he doesn't have anything to hide in, and good Lord, when you get into that rock grass we've got,
Mhm.
that's where all those big trout have been coming from.
Yep.
They're ambushing from those patches of eelgrass.
Yeah.
And there's some rock around it. But I haven't seen eelgrass like that in 15 years. Not eelgrass.
Rock
grass.
That like that in 15 years.
Yeah, normally you got to get up there. You start seeing it closer you got to Rock Island.
From
Yeah,
Eagles
there's a
Nest,
ton of it just north
from
of Rock
Eagles
Island.
Nest up to Rock Island. Yeah. But this grass is way south of that. It's 5 miles south of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of it up around. I mean, to the point where at low tide, you can't throw any surface lures.
Right.
So it's just laid over sideways.
Right.
And there's like,
Well, when you wait till it's wet on top, get you one of those. Bill made a lure with a willow blade. We made a thunder spin with a willow blade, called it Cajun Flash. Take that thing and run it by that clump of grass and watch what happens. Whether it's a trout or a red, a big fish will come out from under there and knock that thing out of your hand. And that's been about 15, 16 years ago. We had that extraordinary. I had 3 fish over 5 pounds in 20 minutes, trout. And then we had 3 oversized reds when we moved 100 yards. And I did it for two TV crews and 4 or 5 trips for about 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden those big fish left those, I guess it was temperature.
on the greener pastures.
Yeah.
But I haven't tried that bait on these areas because, well, I hadn't had the crews for it. But
Yeah,
I'm gonna dig some out. Next month will be perfect. May and early June is better on that.
I'll continue throwing topwater probably till,
They quit eating it.
yeah, even then I'm gonna throw it probably mid-June.
Yeah.
But
Well, you take the hooks off and throw it where that grass is on the surface.
yeah,
Yep.
but I'll
You just want to see. Y'all say all you want to do is just see that thing blow up.
That's
Just take the hooks off, and you don't have to worry with the fish.
That used to be not to interrupt
Yeah.
Kenny here, that used to be a trick we did tournaments.
tournaments. That's what I was fixing to say.
We'd
Yeah,
always
you don't want to catch them. You want to see.
find an area that had
Yeah.
fish and you just keep checking them. You throw that
Yeah.
topwater through there and
Yep.
they'd blow up. And,
Especially bone.
But I'll continue throwing a spoon all the way. I mean, I'll throw a spoon dang near year round.
Yeah.
That's summertime. That's my go-to red lure.
I always say as long as there's pinfish in the water, a spoon will work. Seems like that to me. That's what it mimics.
Yeah. The only time I really don't use them a lot is in the dead of the winter when it starts getting real cold, and I'm switching to some micro baits. And,
Yep.
Yeah, and of course some slow suspending stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm not a red fin guy, but
I was told that's cotton cordell.
That's what they call it here. But a lot of them don't know the word redfin.
Don't get me wrong, I have some.
Yeah.
I do, but it's not for me. I can tell you that.
You missed it. You know that.
No, I
Did you get
hit
it?
him. He flew off, but I hit him.
He's jacked up, huh?
Well, this thing has got a groove in it. He was hanging in the groove.
I got it. He was smart. But yeah, we like the bite right now just seems like they're just it's not reaction. I mean, they're hunting for something to eat.
Right.
So, I mean,
And they're in a hurry because the water's 80 degrees.
yeah, and I've had several, especially on the lower part of the tide, where you can see fish moving. I mean, I've had several that have come from, 10, 15 foot away. You see them charge that top water.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you're sitting there watching, you're like, here he comes, here he comes. You're trying not to get them excited because you know what's going to happen as soon as they see him, they're going to jerk it away. But they're attacking.
I do want to say one thing. I was talking to someone earlier at the gas station, and talking about seeing the reds coming after him on that low tide, and see him come and get up behind it, and then not eat. I said, "Are you stopping
They
it?"
stopped it.
Yeah. I said, "If anything, speed it up."
Yeah.
So if you guys are going to throw top water, do not stop it.
Yeah. It still has to look natural. And if a bear's chasing me, I'm not going to slow down.
Right.
I'm not going to stop. I'm going to run faster if I can. The same way with a mullet trying to get away from a redfish. He is going to run, start skipping, start doing everything. And it was funny. The guy had yesterday or day before yesterday. He could work a top water, but he couldn't get it to walk, like three of us could.
Right.
Get it nice, steady rhythm and everything. So it was kind of looked like a
just erratic,
schizophrenic topwater. And he got more hits than I was throwing one, and the other guy with us was throwing one and working them more like they should. But he was getting a lot more hits because it was so erratic and it would just scoot. And when one would come near it, I mean, the hits he got were ours would come up and they slurp it down. His were just full on, linebacker hitting a quarterback hit.
So it was about this time last year, maybe a little bit later in May. We had redfish everywhere.
Hmm.
Could not get them to eat. What in the world? Out of frustration, I cast it out there and I just reeled that topwater as fast as I could, and it bam, every fish. And then everyone on the boat's throwing topwater, just ripping them as fast as they could.
Yeah, you got to make them react to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they would come from 10, 15 feet away.
Yeah. And they, I think it's the predator in them. When they're wanting to feed, they'll chase, but they're, I don't know, it's almost like snook fishing. Snook, you've really gotta piss them off.
Oh yeah.
Unless there's a very short window where they will eat anything, but most of the time you got to piss them off to make them eat. I think, the redfish and the trout, even the trout get like that, where they'll just swim by, but if it comes by them looking like it's trying to get away, they're going to go eat it.
That's what I tell everyone growing up, going down to Honeymoon Island and places like that.
Mm-hmm.
Three Rooker,
Caladesi, all that stuff.
Calades. You really have about a solid hour of good snook bite.
Yeah.
That's about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, you'll catch some at other times, but
yeah,
you're gonna have a good solid hour.
Yeah. I think that's why I like redfish so much. You get, and trout are the same way. They will eat through the tide. You very rarely get, okay, you got 10 minutes here and then they're going to shut off. I mean, redfish will, as long as the water's flowing, and I've seen it, over the last 2 weeks, time after time, as long as we've got that water moving, they're eating. As soon as the tide slows, we'll still catch one or two. The bite slows up. It's just eat a sandwich, guys. Let it turn.
Yep.
And as soon as it turns, you can sit on the same spot. You just got to kind of readjust where you're at and where you're casting to the bars and stuff. But, it's moving water. Snook aren't like that.
Right.
Actually, the ones you caught might have been up here. They're not. They haven't learned yet.
It was about the peak tide.
Yeah. They're still snook.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's now I will say, my best bite has been the last hour of the tide and the first hour of the tide for both trout and reds for the last
last
2
of the
weeks.
incoming, first of the outgoing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we've caught them all through the tide, but the best part is at the highest part for sure.
Which typically it's in the middle of the tide, but for trout.
Yeah.
But for whatever, have you noticed that?
I disagree. I'm not gonna say I noticed it, but I disagree. The best part of the tide for me, for my whole career, has been the last 2 hours of the incoming. Many days on these moon tides, because of the extreme tide, you cannot get a bite until the middle, flat middle, and then you'll catch.
Yeah, you're
10
talking the extreme tide. Though.
Well, I'm talking about the exception. That's not an exception when it happens for 7 days each month.
Mhm.
That's just if you're out there on those tides, you may have some of the best bites you have, but you're going to have some of the worst, slowest no bite for the whole first hour period. And what it is about is not about the range of tide. It's about how much tide is in there over the bottom. In other words, what's the depth of the water at that point in the tide? And if you look at now we have these apps. I used to have to do it in my head, but when you have the app on your phone and you look and it says you've got 1 point, it's reading over mean low tide, over
Right.
0. Well, y'all understand that, but the public doesn't. That general public doesn't pay attention to anything but the high and the low and whether they're in the incoming outgoing. Well, the important part with me is I ask people, what do you sleep under? A sheet and a spread, or a sheet, a spread, and a blanket? And they look at me like I'm nuts. And I say, most of them say, okay, a sheet. I said, well, you're a bonefish. Get out of here. We don't have those. Number two is if you have 2 feet of water over your head, you're a redfish in this area on the Big Bend at Keaton, at Econfina. If you have 3 feet of water over your head, now I'm talking about the hard bottom to the surface, not what your machine shows and not what the tide says, but if there's that much water over the bottom, you can't get a trout to start moving in the general population now. I'm not talking about y'all spotting fish in 2 feet of water. That doesn't count because that's not what
That's
I do.
not the norm.
Well, that's not what most fishermen are doing here.
Right.
And of the population, you're fishing for 10% of them. So 90% of the fish are out there in more water, and they're waiting on that water. And what that water is pressure down on their body. They feel the depth of water is a column of water pushing down on them. And that's why the barometer messes up our fishing. When the barometer goes super zip high and the pressure's down on them, they think they're in deeper water than they are. If it goes low pressure comes, they go, oh, we got to get out of here. Let's grab something to eat and go. But whatever it is they know the barometer does, I don't care because I don't have the barometer and I don't feel it. So I just throw it out the window and go, depth. How much water? If you have 1.5 feet of water over 0, you can start catching a trout. But before you do, you can stay home.
How you explain that in a negative tide and you're fishing?
You're fishing in
They're
a pool. They're trapped. They're stuck. That has nothing to do with here comes the river, here goes the river. The tidal system that we fish is about where those fish are located. If they're sitting there, they're waiting on a condition to get right. When that condition's right, they feed. Now, I'll give you another example of why that is the protocol for the population. The last 2 rod. Do you know what that is? The last 2 rod bite? All right.
Tell me.
My whole career and every single day I'm out there drowning pinfish or whatever we're doing in 3 to 5 feet of water. When that tide ebbs down and the switch goes down on that flow, when it slows down, every trout from Texas to Miami feeds at that point. And I can have any crew of any skills or whatever, and if they pull out a sandwich, I become the trout Nazi. I say, put the damn sandwich down. You're not eating now. Don't get in the cooler. I said, leave that alone. And I can sense it when I've had a bite every 10 minutes or 8 and all of a sudden it goes 8 a double, a triple,
Mhm.
it's on. And they sense that water and they go, did you get a bite? I didn't eat. Did you eat? I didn't get it. Oh, oh. And they grab that food because in their mind, there may not ever be
It's
another
almost
tide.
over.
Yes, the tide's dropping and they will feed. And I'm talking about, and the reason I learned this, I wrote fishing reports for 30 years. And when the marina was there, I'd say, what time was your best bite? And where were you? I was down there at Dallas Creek and it was 1:45. And another guy's at Piney Point and it's 1:30. And another guy's up. And the tide, I knew that there was 10 minutes difference. And I could tell, and every one of them would fill in that formula for me. And I saw it for 20 years and I said, okay, where I'm going to be and where you might be is different. But I'm going to play my ace at that last hoorah. That last 30 minutes, and you got to guess when it is, unless you're watching that tide exactly.
So I can actually, over the last couple weeks now, that makes a lot of sense because we caught, like I said, we caught fish on the moving water, but when the water got high enough over those oyster bars and everything settled into where they wanted to be,
And that's what I'm saying.
that's when it really
weeks,
turned
but
on.
On average, I like fishing that middle.
Yeah.
that
Well, where
middle
we're
there.
at, what we're doing, what I've been doing,
Right.
you've been doing a lot of what Pat's been doing too, but what I've been doing, the last part of the tide is when the tide is right.
Yeah,
for
that's
where
when I'm moving.
where
in.
I'm at.
All right,
Yeah, that's when I'm moving in
Well-
and fishing like
Right.
you are.
Well, realize that here's what I tell people: when the bite is horrible, go shallow. Why? Because the tide is full now and things stop.
Hmm.
These fish didn't have any water over their head an hour ago.
Exactly.
These fish had 2, 3, 4, 5 feet.
Yeah.
So they've had a longer extended stretch period to
To feed.
feed.
Yeah.
Opportunity. Your opportunity is shorter. So it's more definable to you
Right.
if you stay there.
It's more noticeable.
Well, you can catalog it.
Yeah.
You
I think
know
you-
exactly
I
what.
think you should tell the people they need to go deeper when it gets like that.
I know you the thing. Yeah, you want me to tell them that.
If you see a boat on the point, they're not catching nothing.
But if
They're
if-
eating a sandwich. Take a break.
here's what you can tell them to deeper. If you don't have much tide for the day, get out in deep water
Yes,
and fish
for sure.
because they will care less if they're in 5, 6, 7
Right.
feet, especially in the middle of the summer.
You can generate a bite out there.
Well, there's going to be available food source. The menu is diversified because there's plenty of water. The reason we changed the prescription of the bottom, as I tell people, is for the menu. If you look at the menu and you're selling hamburgers and hot dogs, you may not go to that restaurant that often. And what do you need? You need a diversified menu. The bigger you get, the more you need a diversified
Let me get him
menu.
down. Let me get him going.
All right.
Oh,
Well,
God.
They don't get a diversified menu on his boat this time of year. It's been
hey,
He's just serving filet mignon.
hey, I'm gonna tell you something. Our diversified menu is our colors and our plastics. The reason that we change plastics is trying to guess, well, what does that fish expect? What does he think it is? We'll never know what he thinks it is. We just know he thinks it's food. And on one day with one condition and one surface, color of water, clarity of water, which is light penetration, and which is all about light. The wave action, the sun's out, the clouds is all about light. If you play the light fantastic, you find it quicker. You find that what is different is what they're going to bite. But what I've learned is, I'll tell you something else about the last two raw. The biggest trout that I catch, and I have caught for 30 years, come when the water stops moving. Why? Why? I know why. Do you?
Last chance.
No, it's past that.
Huh?
They don't bite in that last chance. Everybody's biting then. They bite when no one else does because they're not competitive
Okay.
as being big fish. And they will take the fish, the creature crawlers, the bait fish, and
Left
all
over.
that are moving on that low tide, then that's when they feed. So when I'm using a legal black sea bass to catch trout, or I'm using a grunt.
That's a big trout to catch.
That's a big
Well,
trout.
I fish for big fish. I'm sorry. It's like Reagan Fox, my good old friend, used to say, if you're scared, call 911. Okay. But listen, a grunt or a croaker, as you know, you learned something about croaker. a croaker and a grunt are bottom feeders.
Mhm.
Their mouth is on the bottom. Don't pull out a grunt to fish for a trout in the middle of the tide, because that's not when you can catch him.
Right.
You don't use him until you can catch him. When you catch him, throw him.
Match the hatch.
No, the time of day that that fish is active is when that fish will be a successful bait for you to catch a fish on. And
So in
so
other words, just fish all day.
I saved my pigfish until the dead low tide, but I'm telling you.
When they're not moving.
And when you
the
put-
pigfish would be moving.
Yes, and you put that pigfish out there, and when it grunts, something is coming for him. It may not be a big trout, but a red, I had a girl on a boat years ago, and all she talked about, she jinxed me. I'm Irish, so I don't want you to talk about the fish before we catch them. And she said, "Are we going to catch a redfish today?" I said, "Well, we would have." And she said, "Am I going to catch a redfish?" I said, "Well, you would have, but now that you said." And so all day long, do you think we can catch a redfish? It got down there. I'd already been out there 6 hours, and I had 2 pigfish, 8 to 10 inches in the live well. And she said, "Aren't we going?" She said, "Can we catch it?" And I said, "Here, let's put this pigfish on." And he was 10 inches long, and I knew there wasn't a trout there that was good enough. And a 26 3/4 inch redfish committed suicide and attacked
Choked him down.
and choked down that 10-inch pigfish, and she caught him. And she said, "You waited all day to do that, didn't you?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I did."
Yeah.
I lied. I said, "Yeah, that's what I was waiting on." And I had one more bait in the well. You know, I didn't have 2 and down to 2 baits left. But hey, she caught that redfish, and I said, "Thank you, God," because I realized I hadn't been in your house in 30 years, but I don't know. You must really love her, because that was great. I said, "That was great."
That's good
I
time.
didn't take any credit for it. I said, "No, that's great." But here's the thing: on the dead low, any bait you get that's live or dead, that's when that color you can't catch a fish on any other time will work. And you're not going to reach in there and get a non-catching bait when it's tough. You're going to go to your favorite. And the thing to do is reverse that and go to one you've never caught a fish on when it gets bad.
Well, I got a bunch of those today. I got a bunch that I've never used, so we're fixing
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, but you got a bunch of baits you and I didn't know existed that are beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Some of those colors we got over there that he makes in that crawfish.
Yeah.
Kenny would have 3 bags of baits in his hand, and I'd say, "Oh, look at this one," and he'd go and put one of those down and pick up that one. He did it 3 times.
And then Robbie's over there. He goes all the way to the side. Hey, you got to look at this one.
It's like Christmas time.
Hey,
But he went from where we were to the other side of the warehouse to grab that one, so you can believe I got something.
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah,
we did.
that
We
was for a
found
reason.
we found some colors that
Which he was preparing me for the next tournament.
Yeah.
well, he told him the 4 best colors to go to Louisiana.
Louisiana.
5 best, yeah.
Yeah.
And 3 of them were the ones that you wanted him to pick up for.
They
were.
No wonder I didn't get them all.
Hey.
No, I got him. I just
No, I mean the Mama's Chicken,
Yep.
Magic Grass, which was one you didn't because
Yeah.
it's purple and it's Louisiana.
Yeah.
Chicken on a Chain, and what was the other one?
it's up there.
Mama's Magic Grass.
Magic Grass, Morning Glory, Chicken on Chain,
Morning
Mama's
Glory.
Chicken,
Glory.
Yeah,
Houdini,
Good
and
one up.
Opening night.
and opening night.
Yeah.
I don't throw opening night because of the bluefish in Spanish cutting it.
Well, the reason I always liked opening night out there was because it was easy to see in the water, and it had a lot of flash. And the redfish, like you've probably seen out
He
there
doesn't
now,
care. Well,
if he sees it, he eats it.
Right.
So the whole thing with redfish out there is getting in their vision. If it comes through, and I used to, I take clients out there all the time, and all my clients are from here going out there with me. So the first time going out there, sight casting, you're telling them, okay, there's the redfish leading, just reel it right across in front of them, let it fall right in front of them. When they do that, they do it about 3 foot. And I'm like, no, closer.
Literally, right.
Yeah, I said literally hit them in the head with it. So it gets to the point where, they move from 3 foot to 2 foot to 1 foot. And finally, I just throw out there, reel it right across his head, hit him in the forehead, and he hits it. I'm like, understand? I said, that's how redfish are out here. And, even the sheephead,
Oh yeah.
the sheephead will follow. You got to have a real tiny bait though. If you have a little spinner bait, I mean, like a beetle spin almost, you will catch the crap out of sheephead.
They
out there.
will. The big ones will eat the P&V.
Yeah.
Little P&V.
Yeah, they will. I mean, they got to be, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
But every sheephead out there will hit a little beetle spin. You just bring it across in front of them. They just think it's a crab. They can't resist them.
So the two things I'll catch them on here is a spoon, like a 1/4 ounce spoon, a smaller spoon, and like a little P&V or Ned rig.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is we would get hit on the full size. I call them full size topwaters, whether it be the He Dog or the just the regular skitter walk, the full size. We get more hits on like the Top Dog Junior and the small skitter walk. And even the small spook, the Spook Junior. Yeah, and a lot more hits on the smaller ones. And I can't figure that one out because I mean it's not that much smaller, but it might just be a profile in the water or whatever it is. But I mean it's 2-3 to 1 on the smaller topwaters.
It's probably a side profile with them. They hit it so many mullet out there probably, and other fish that when they hit a little one, their success rate is better. And I think they got to be able to learn that in order to survive.
Yeah. The only problem with that then is if you get you can do it in some ripple, but once the ripple gets up, you got to go to the bigger bait.
For him to find.
So before we get into the last, wind it down, talking about best practices come up, I want to talk about Camp Keaton again. We are at Camp Keaton right now. As you can see, the swimming pool's behind us.
We're under a beautiful tiki lodge.
Yes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yes,
it is delightful. We've got a great fan out here, and it's cool, and it's been really nice.
So if you have an
swinging
RV
chairs.
and you're looking for a place to stay, this is the place to stay. So reach out to Camp Keaton. Laurel will take care of you. If you guys have never stayed here, I promise you're going to have a good time, especially on the weekend. They're going to feed you good. We've got a spread over here right now waiting on us. So reach out. And then I also want to talk about Keaton Beach Bums. Monica and Jared, they lost everything. And they've started putting together a store because obviously they're going through all the red tape of rebuilding.
Yeah.
So they've got some trailers set up with all their product in it now. They have live bait, and food. They are cooking again. So stop by and help them out. I mean, they could use it, especially after losing everything, and they got everything you need. And
they got tackle in there now. They've got live bait, and the beer, all the beer and beverages you could want, and foodstuffs. They're putting together the store in those trailers, and they
pretty much have everything.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Except fuel, right?
Clothes and beach toys, scalloping supplies, all of that. They've got all of that. And y'all stop by and speak to them and spend some money with them, help them out.
And if you don't have an RV, you're not going to stay at Camp Keaton. Stephanie has been getting places put back in. So there's places to stay at Camp Keaton. And Greg, you guys are going to be open not too much longer.
Yeah, we got probably a couple more months, and we'll have the lodge open up there in Beacon Fina. So we're chomping at the bit.
Yeah, so there's options.
Yeah.
And again, Laura, we appreciate the opportunity to come here and you're welcome. So we'll be back.
No questions on the questionnaire page.
Yeah, I'll look at those. I don't believe so. Let's see.
We put everybody to sleep tonight.
Christopher Suff said, hello, Captain Greg Duvall. Safe Floor, Florida says, great show, fellas. Speaking of Safe Floor.
Yes.
Man, I love it.
Yeah.
You have it, don't you?
Oh, yeah. I've got it in my shoal water, and it's been on there. Did Randy do yours?
Yes.
Yeah. So I did mine in, I believe, 21, the year I got the boat. So, and I mean, it still looks like brand new on it. And I've had just about every kind of floor covering there is, from You know, you name it, I've had it, except for the brand new ones. Um, and it's by far the best one as far as durability.
Easy
And
to clean.
Clean, yes.
Yes.
Easy to clean, and it doesn't really get dirty. You know, I mean, because the water drains through it, and the dirt will drain through it. You know, the dirt doesn't set on top of it, so it drains through it. If you do get blood or anything like that on it, it washes right in. But I mean, even if you, I didn't believe Randy told me this. He's like, when you get it, if it gets dirty, just leave it out in the rain. The rain will clean it, and it does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how easy it is to clean. So and it weighs a little more than the other stuff. So if you got a really light boat, you
It's
know,
still not that.
it's not that bad, but you know, the insulation factor of it quiets the boat down, you know, and a lot of times a little bit of weight on a boat is not a bad thing. It makes it ride better. And like I said, I love it. I couldn't be more happy with it. I mean,
Yeah, I know on my boat. I mean, I didn't see any difference in draft.
yeah.
You know?
I don't think it's enough to make any draft, but I mean, you know, I've heard the arguments from a lot of the foam products that it's heavy and that kind of stuff, and it is to a point. You know, I mean, if you product to product, but it's not enough to make a difference, especially in a bigger boat, in a wide boat.
All right, we had a question come in from Jason Johnson. What's the best soft plastics to throw under a cork this time of year? Right now, we talked about it. Pat and I is throwing the little P&V from Assassin and Laguna Shrimp color.
And if you see larger bait, and we've got some now, we got more ballyhoo than we had, but 2 and 3 weeks ago is when I and Kenny both pulled that P&V out, and I started catching fish that I could not get to hit the 5-inch. I don't usually bounce a sea shad, the little 4-inch bait. I'll put it on a cork, under a cork, and then I also run the Elite Shiner, which is a thinner and smaller bait, same length as the P&V, but that's what I start with. That's my go-to in the Elite Shiner. And then if I'm getting bites, if I've got the color in that same setup, I'll run the 5-inch. But I run a lot of 5-inch once we get through June, from July to August. I mean, through August to September, I'm going to put a 5-inch under there. This time of year, start small, grow up if you can. But you may find trout that will not take a larger profile than the sea shad, which is 4-inch. The P&V is 3-inch, I think, and so is the Elite Shine. So it's we're Assassin. We use Assassin, but those baits are easy for you to find in this region, and so that's another reason we use them. They're made locally up there in Mayo, and you know, you can find the colors, and if you can't, the dealers can order those colors for you.
Yep. Yeah, and
I use Kenny's talking about using no weight, which is a great thing to do if you can train people to use it. I use a 1/16 ounce spring lock, which screws on so that the pinfish don't pull it off. And you go through so much fewer baits under that cork than you do bouncing, because you don't have all the blowfish and little blues and all. You don't have as many of those ne'er-do-well other also rans cut you off.
Yeah, I will say the one trade-off getting to this time of the year, using no weight, it does sink slower. So if there's some ladyfish around,
Yeah,
you know, they're going to grab it. But if there's ladyfish around,
it doesn't matter what you throw them, they're going to grab it.
Yeah, but if there's ladyfish around, there's trout around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, whatever baits they're at, they share the same menu.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And that's like when I went out there to target sea bass, and of course I see mackerel busting on big schools of bait. So now all of a sudden we're mackerel fishing, and of course I don't have any wire leader with me.
Yeah.
But if the plastic was, or lure or whatever we use, was able to get below the mackerel, we were catching trout.
Yeah. They were down there just getting
even
scraps.
in 10, 12 feet of water.
So,
Tell them how about the 3 fish you caught when you were looking for triple tail. How deep those 3 trout were?
We were 15 to 17 feet.
wow. That's early to be that deep, huh?
Isn't that
That's a
something?
long.
I think they just stayed there.
Yeah, most of it. So I got a little tip for you on mackerel. If you get out there like what you just said, I always have a pack of long shank hooks or extra long shank hooks in my boat. So I'll take them and tie that on and clip the barb down on it and just run the hook through the eye of the lure. And it gives you a little bit of a,
I did have some long shank
yeah,
hooks on.
it gives you a little bit of a wire.
in
With
the
mackerel,
boat.
usually it helps a little bit. You don't go through a bait every fish.
You nose hook him. So if
Yeah,
he
you just-
squats, he's back behind your line.
Yeah, well, you just tie your hook on your line, then you run the hook through the eye of your lure. You know, where you would tie to your lure.
Oh, I see what you're
So
saying.
it gives you about an inch of metal before your lure.
Yeah.
So I did that out of necessity one day because I was running out of jigs quickly. I was like, I figured something out here.
Yeah, I mean, there was, and if it's slick and you want to have some fun, run out there, you'll find them.
Yeah.
Well, I made 5 trips in 7 days and went black sea bass fishing every day. And I tied up 12 of my Assassin electric chicken 1/4-ounce heads on wire and only had 2 cutoffs in 5 days.
That's
If I
good.
hadn't had the wire, I'd have had 30.
Yeah.
And I literally
This man
just took
should've
the
shown
wire
that.
out of my box.
Yeah,
You know, and of
that's always
course
the way
I get
to
out
go.
there and
That's
I'm like,
I can carry those 12 jigs now for 2 years probably and not ever use them.
Never need
But
them.
if
The
I
wire's gonna rust before
don't
you get
have
to
them, but if I don't
You'll
have
need
them,
'em.
the mackerel will attack me.
You will need them.
Jim Rudd reminded us to tell everyone that they are installing the docks.
Yeah, I saw that. Yep. It's docks at Keaton again.
You mean the docks that you walk out on to get in your boat, or the center dock?
Both.
The
Both.
center dock was being put up
Yeah,
when
they-
I came by.
They're working on both.
They had the floaters. I saw the floaters in the water. So they had.
Will wonders never cease.
If
It
they
only
had
took
that when we did
let's
the
see.
cleanup.
Let's see, before we congratulate him, let's do the math. September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May.
Baby steps.
It only took them 8 months to build the dock.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know,
But they're there now.
they went up on the boat rent fee. It's now $10 a day or $40 for the year pass. You know, but-
It ought to be, I'm not. keep
I know.
Go over to Carabel and try to put your boat in.
Yeah.
So I'm going to look at the calendar real quick because I know the first week we won't.
$20. Yeah.
$150 put your boat in. You want to get it out? You got another $150.
Sounds like the keys. Wow.
So I will.
10, 15 years ago. I was good. But I went
You guys good with doing it on the 12th June?
June.
I have no idea.
On Thursday?
If I live through my ablation on the 5th, I'll be there.
He don't want you. Either of them.
The 5th is a Thursday, so I can't.
Yeah, I'll
do
be
it
in
then.
Louisiana fishing the tournament on the.
Well,
5th.
I'll be in the hospital getting ablation.
I'll have to see on that. I might. That's on the full moon, so I might be in Boca Grande,
Okay.
but I don't know for sure yet.
If not, we'll probably still do it on the 12th just
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
want to have it.
You still lying?
Yeah, we're. Anyways, we'll let y'all know, but we will have it next month at some point. David Lee says now fill in the potholes at the ramp. You're asking for a lot now.
Hey, are you crazy? Are
One
you
thing at a
crazy?
time. You beat me to it.
Yeah.
Are you crazy? That's
Yeah.
scheduled for 2026.
That makes sure nobody goes in there fast.
So David Lee says it's free in Dixie County. So if you don't want to pay the fee at Keaton, please go to Dixie County. Nah. But you have any last minute things you want to?
No, I mean we got some. You know, it's everybody always says when's your favorite time of year to fish. We're in one of them.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's
you know,
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you have the opportunity, I mean, everybody obviously wants to fish on the best tides and everything, but right now, you know, the tide. This is one of the only, you know, now and probably October are about the only times where tide are, you know, you'll catch fish even on bad tides a lot of times. So, you know, it's just time to go.
Oh yeah, yeah, and really from now until about mid-June,
Mhm.
and then it starts getting hot. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll still catch trout.
When these guys can't catch fish on artificials, folks, y'all just call me because
I'm still. You know what I'm gonna do?
Man.
I love it.
You know what I'm gonna do, but
He meant to say, well, we can't catch fish right up against the shore all the time.
right.
That's what he meant to say.
Yeah. When we move on to other species, so if you get tired of trout and you don't want to go to fat anymore, you want to fish for some other species, give us a call.
They'll turn you on to sail cats and
Oh man.
ladyfish and blues. They're real good at that in July.
So it's funny you say sail cats. So it was probably 3 weeks ago. As you know, we just started topwater bite. It just kind of really started kicking good and had a low tide, and I was throwing topwater out there, and client had a big explosion. Boom! You know, we were out. It was low. It was, you know, it wasn't negative, but it was still low when we were 300 yards off the bank. Boom! Big explosion. I'm like, all right, you know, fighting this, pulling, dragging, everything, get up to the boat. Sail cat. We caught 4 of them on those dang topwaters. I was like, all right,
Pat gives me a hard time, but I got talked into eating one.
they're not bad.
No, they're actually pretty good.
I would never clean one.
I got
They are a
suckered
mess.
into it.
Yeah.
I'm not putting them in my cooler.
No, they're a mess. I ate them. I ate them in Texas. They were
stink.
good.
Yeah, they are good.
Yep, they were good.
But Pat, you got any last minute things?
No. I'm tickled to death that the county's not gonna have the killings that I thought they were gonna have at the ramp during scallop season. So I'm proud that they decided to build some docks, but those docks sat over there for 7 months or 6 months without being picked up and moved, and
They wanted them to be new for the big
there's
crowds.
really no excuse that they aren't already there.
They need a plan to get them out
When the storms are
when the
coming.
storms are coming.
The Coast Guard needs to come fix our buoy lining.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's not the county's fault at
No.
all, and they have applied it and begged and gotten mean and nasty and everything else. I understand they've done everything.
Now Shannon Millinor has been very instrumental in
Mhm.
getting them out here to at least mark the stuff with floating
And I
buoys.
appreciate everything Shannon's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have to be doing it. Our
And honestly, not to stick up for the Coast Guard, but I have a friend of mine that's kind of indirectly in the know with them. I forget what the number was. It was a huge number of requests all up and down the West Coast because the storm, obviously, about fixing channel markers and everything. And he said they're going to the highest population areas first, you know, the highest density, the most use areas first.
they
And
told,
that's,
they
yeah.
told someone in this county that they didn't have a barge, that our water was too
Could get
shallow
in
for
here.
their barge.
Well,
And they built that thing with a boat. It was not a barge.
right.
they did tell Shannon that they have so many in the Tampa St. Pete area,
That's exactly.
and it's a higher traffic area, and you have big
have more
ships.
use.
You have big ships
Yeah.
coming in and out of there.
Yeah.
So of course that's going to be their focus, and I get it. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So at least they did come out here. They did mark the hazards. Just keep in mind, stay between the buoys. Don't get outside
If you're not sure,
of them.
go slow.
Slow down.
Yeah, don't get outside of them because the channel markers that are broke off are facing outward,
Yeah.
away from the channel,
Yeah.
outside of those buoys.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. If you're not sure where you are, slow up.
The most dangerous one is the gate, which is 4A5, which is at the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 4A5, and then you turn and go through the wiggle ward. Slow down there. The gap is less than 30 feet between the two buoys on certain tides that they put in there. Even though the original iron is 50 feet wide, those buoys have migrated to where you have to be going slow. If there's another boat coming, stop and let them go through there. But that's where the man got the people seriously hurt,
Mhm.
because that one laid over, and it didn't lay over in the storm. It laid over about a week before that man hit it. It was not laying in the water, and it's sitting horizontal, and it's 12 feet of it's laying there. And that's why you need to slow down going through there until you see what that hazard is.
I'm glad I don't have to run the channel,
Yeah.
but
well, I don't on most tides, but most people are running it that visit this area and don't
Right.
live here.
And they should, because, there's
There's
been,
houses
there's been
down on the
people
channel.
hitting sandbars,
Yeah.
you know.
And old channel markers.
All right, guys, we'll see you next month. We appreciate you tuning in.